Hi, thanks for joining me. So today is my half-year update for 2022 translation project work, and this has been a pretty productive 6 months here. I'd like to start off with a summary of 2021. I do this every year on romhacking.net, so I'll post on the forum, and I basically just go through romhacking.net's, information database and look at all of the English language translation project, patch releases. So I mostly was interested in this because I had the impression, mistakenly, that a lot of the big translation projects, that had been finished in the past, had led to a slowing, sort of releases, right? And come to find out, that's really not the case. Year over year, the trend is more and more and more finished English language translation projects get released every year. So in, here 2021, that was no different. There were 123 English language translation patches released. That's the most that have ever been released in a year. And yeah, the trend tends to be that Famicom games are the Famicom is the system with the most English language translation patches released, and that continued to be the case this year. They were down a bit, I think, from last year. There were 17 Famicom patches released last year. The Super Famicom typically comes in right behind that. There were 12 releases this year. We actually had more releases for the Game Boy in 2021 than there were for the Super Famicom. There were 14 Game Boy translation patches released. That was pretty interesting. The Game Boy Advance and DS had quite a few English language patches released, and some of the disc-based systems had more than normal, a larger amount of English language translation patches released than typical. The PlayStation in particular had 8 translation patches last year, so if you're interested, definitely check those out. The Saturn, the PC Engine, the WonderSwan, the PlayStation 2, MSX, Famicom Disk System, all had pretty good showings. So if you guys want to check out that post, go ahead and take a look in the description. I'll link to that thread on romhacking.net. So next up, in terms of my work, Ray Earth 2. This one has been kicking around for a number of years now. I've talked about this in my previous videos. My goal was to check this against a playthrough video online and just, make sure that the script is in as good shape as I can get it. What I found in doing that is that I had failed to properly dump some of the colored text that appears in the game, though the way that the game encodes the text when it is colored is different than it is when it is not colored, and I failed to account for that when I dumped it. So I went ahead and rectified that issue, so I now have some more text dumped for that game. I am going to have to go back in and translate all of that, so I believe I have yet to do that. So this is still a project that's kind of, it's being worked on sort of in the background here, and I don't know what it is specifically about this game that I'm kind of like, being a perfectionist about while simultaneously dragging my heels, but what I'm hoping is that it's just going to be a better project for it in the end. So I did some translation. Sometimes I just get in a mood where I don't feel like working on an ongoing project, and I just want to poke around at some scripts randomly just to see what they're like. So on the PC Engine, I went ahead and took a look at Genji Tsushin Agedama. I believe I actually translated the whole script because it's tiny. It's just the intro text, and then maybe there was a couple other lines that occur in the game somewhere. So it's like an action game for the PC Engine. I'm actually part of a PC Engine Discord where some folks hang out that are sort of deep into that system, and most of us are working on English language translation projects and things like that. So that's one that I think might get done kind of by folks there, including myself. I also took a little bit of a look at F1 Dream. I don't think I actually translated anything for that, but I did run some of it through my translation memory, which is kind of one of the ways that I prep for translating something is, if terms and words and lines and things that aren't in that translation memory, I'll go ahead and start putting them in. So that's a portion of the translation process. So I poked around at F1 Dream that has a very small script, so chances are I might just bang that one out. I also worked on Chibi Madoka-chan Quiz Day Pihyara. This is a game that probably nobody cares about. It's a quiz game, but it's actually like an action-based quiz game. So you play Madoka-chan, you sort of like run around on a side-scrolling action board, but ultimately what you're doing is defeating enemies and then picking up the little letters like A, B, C, or D of a 4-part multiple choice question and answering quiz questions. They all seem to be pretty specifically about Chibi Madoka-chan, like the series, the manga and anime, and like the author of Chibi Madoka-chan manga. So yeah, it's really a game for Chibi Madoka-chan fans. It's just kind of fun to translate. I like translating the quiz questions. It's halfway done, so I'll probably just go ahead and finish that up at some point. Additionally, I dug out a script that has been kicking around for a very long time. Esper Knight dumped a script for the Oh My Goddess game on the PC Engine, 15 years ago, at least 12 years ago. It was like a long time ago. I think that he was interested in the game. I think he's a little bit of an Oh My Goddess fan, and so, was I, so am I. So, I had translated about 60% of that script, way back when. And I just, lost interest in it. So I was like, hey, maybe I'll take a look at that. I was like, I'd put a bunch of work into it. So I've been translating that ever since January. So basically, over these past 5-6 months or so. And it's just about done. I would say I've got another 3 or 4 weeks maybe on that to translate and maybe, check the old just stuff that I translated years and years ago and do a little editing and stuff like that. I mean, who knows? Like, I'm slow and I don't know. But I don't have much left on that. So that's kind of exciting. I think that it was left that the script was insertable, I believe. So I'm going to need to reach out to Esper Knight. Thankfully, he is still active on fan translation projects, so I think he would be agreeable to taking a look at this again. But I have not really re-established contact about that project. But yeah, keep an eye on that. I don't know exactly, how that's going to go. But, it's possible even this year, maybe Oh My Goddess on PCFX. We'll have an English language translation patch. I'm kind of crossing my fingers on that. I also dumped a script for another Famicom Disk System game, Magma Project Hacker. I don't know exactly, how I noticed this. Okay, so yeah, I think what interested me about this is that it's obviously for the Famicom Disk System, but it's loosely based on a computer game called Hacker that was published by Activision and worked on by Steve Cartwright of Activision, old Activision, like kind of original Activision. So yeah, it says the story of this. So I'm looking at some site called VGMPF. It almost feels like it's just pulling from a Wikipedia or something. But it says the story of this game is different than that of the original computer game. An unnamed man is killed in the opening scene, and he gives your character, the R923, a Famicom disk and asks you to stop the Magma Project. Your goal is to find out what exactly the Magma Project is and put an end to it before it's too late. The game mainly takes place in either the overworld or underground dungeons where random encounters will trigger a JRPG-style combat mode. So, yeah, okay, so I see this. So, yeah, it comes across as basically a first-person dungeon crawler, right, with an overworld. I think that's kind of what drew me to it, is that it was like a kind of a JRPG take on a Western computer game. Right, so that was intriguing. So I dumped a script for that. I think that the Famicom Disk System, we'll talk a little bit more about it later, but especially because it's a little challenging to to work with technically. There's some really interesting stuff that's been left on the table there. So I think dumping more Famicom Disk System scripts for more Famicom Disk System games is probably something that I'm going to be looking into in particular. So I also added some functionality to my translation memory software, right? So this is something that I use. It works, it ends up working kind of like machine translation, but it's something I wrote myself. I can just put translations for words and phrases and things like that as I'm translating into it, and I use it to assist me in my translations. So one bit of functionality that I've wanted to have for a long time, and I think it depends on the game that I'm translating, but I definitely ran into a number of games that are, let's say, written completely in katakana or something like that, and the way that it was working is my translation memory would only look up katakana instances of words in katakana, right? And like if your whole script is in katakana, then there are entries in my translation memory that would have been entered in hiragana, for instance, that are valid translations for the words that are being written in katakana. It just didn't have a way of looking them up. So I added that functionality to it. So now, irrespective of if it's something is written in hiragana or it's written in katakana, if there's an entry in there that's written in kana, it'll bring it up for that word, irrespective of its its particular kind of kana. How it's written. So that's actually been super useful. Obviously, it was useful on whatever project it was in particular that I needed it for, but that was fun. I was glad to add some functionality to that software because it's been like a decade since I've really done much work on that particular program. So that was cool. Yeah, so I also translated a script for a game, Honey on the Road. We'll talk a little bit more about Honey in the Sky, but since I had done some work on that, the next logical progression would be to translate the script for Honey on the Road, which I did. I've actually passed that on to Cabbage. No pressure, like don't bug Cabbage about it, but he does have that available if he I think we're planning to maybe work on that as a releasable project at some point, but however that goes, I have that passed that on, and I'm happy to have finished the translation for that. I also decoded the text encoding and identified blocks of script in Utsurun desu Kawao so Hawaii e iku. So I think I just ran across this somewhere. I'm going to read directly from Wikipedia. It's basically, Kawaso moves to Hawaii. It's a video game, for the Famicom. It's based on a popular Japanese manga character from the 80s, the Otter Man. It's Sensya Yoshida's series. The game was published in 1992 by Takara. So, in summary, it says that it's ostensibly a traditional platforming game where you just play, this Otter Man. But it's renowned for being one of the earliest titles to attempt to break away from the video game conventions of the time. There's a series of fake title screens that you pass through at the start. I think as a character, you sort of like play through them. The main character can traverse the background at times to bypass like pits of spikes and things like that seem otherwise impossible to cross. The character's attack requires the player to hold down the attack button as the game cycles through the possible special moves, with more powerful attacks only highlighted for a short period of time. So it's almost like it's not random, but like a roulette kind of system for that. It sounds like they did interesting things in this game. In terms of reception on the Wikipedia here, it says, Kurt Kalata reviewed the game as part of Hardcore Gamers 101, Your Weekly Kusuge, describing it as an inane platformer with no real effort placed into the actual design. But, he also noted that it is humorous and clever. So I think these were all sort of the things that drew me to this, that, is probably ready to dump, so we'll see how that goes. We have some released translation patches here. I think this is the main thing that I was really looking forward to, being able to make this video, right, is getting some projects released. So the first one being Honey in the Sky. And this game is a shoot 'em up for the PC Engine. I'm sure that I've mentioned it in previous videos. It has a gameplay, feature where you can adjust the position of your shots. You can basically rotate your gun on your character 360 degrees. Originally, though, you were only able to rotate it clockwise. Cabbage went in and actually added the ability to rotate it counterclockwise as well, which I think is really significant for the gameplay. I, of course, translated the script. You play as a Japanese like haniwa figure, which are these clay figurines that were used in ancient Japan in like funeral rites and things like that. So it's kind of referencing Japanese history and things like that. You have a god who reaches out to you, and they're like, "Hey, honey, we want you to go ahead and enter the he wants you to enter his wife's consciousness and excise the evil that has taken root there." So you enter these stages, which are sort of abstractly like, I guess, within this other god, and fight the enemies that you find in there. It's a cool shoot 'em up. Like, you have different things that you can equip on your character, different thrusters, different armor, different weapons, and things like that. And I just think it's a really fun game. I was a little bit surprised with the reception to this. It's been downloaded a bunch. There are a couple of reviews on romhacking.net and things like that. But yeah, it seemed like this didn't set the world on fire exactly. I kind of figured to shoot 'em up on the PC Engine. Might have gotten a little bit more attention, but yeah, it's a cool little game. I would definitely recommend you guys check it out. Huge thanks to Cabbage for doing the hacking work on this. This was really his project. He kind of reached out to me, about this. We'd worked on projects together, like City Hunter and stuff like that. So yeah, it was really fun to work on this with him. Big thanks to Diego Ribeiro, also known as Forlorn, for some help with the graphics on that too. And just a note too. So the name, Honey in the Sky. There is a little bit of controversy. Even like one of the reviews mentions like, oh, it should be translated as honey in the sky, which I was fully on board with myself too. So the issue comes up because these haniwa figures, right? It happens to share the sounds, right? The vocal sounds with honey in Japanese, like the way you say it, honey. But it seems pretty clear that it's sort of like a shortened, like a nickname for the haniwa figure. And I was just going to go with something like Hanny, basically, because there's a precedent for haniwa figures that show up in video games to be nicknamed Hani, right? But if you look at the sequel to this, Honey on the Road, there's a character named Lemon, right? So if you look at even that alone, in English, is it going to be stranger to get to the second game and be like, well, there's a character named Lemon and then a character named Honey. Shouldn't it be Honey? Like honey and lemon, right? Like you'd put in your tea or something like that. And the main issue is that this isn't, like, this gets to be like Schrodinger's word in Japanese, right? Because they don't have to commit to an interpretation of it, because it's literally the same sound. So it gets to be a pun in Japanese, and so it can kind of be honey or honey in whatever context that it shows up in. And the developers were clearly aware of this. There was an advertisement for the game where a woman says, "Welcome home, honey," and the character, Honey in the game, shows up and says, "My name is Honey," which, so it's kind of like, haha, like she's not saying "Welcome home, honey" like a term of endearment. She's saying "Welcome home, honey" to her haniwa husband, right? So that's another thing where I'm like, well, it's kind of, they're treating his name as if it were honey, not honey. So I have ultimately got on board with, like, let's call this Honey. This is Honey in the Sky. It's Honey on the Road. Those are the two games in the series. Some people are going to be like I was initially and be like, hey, it should be Honey. It just is what it is, right? Suffice to say, like, if you're wondering about that, just try to think about the fact that maybe I have spent more time thinking about this, right, than you have, right? Because I translated the game and I needed to, like, to put a lot of thought into that. But you don't have to agree with my decision. But yeah, Honey in the Sky. Really excited to have that patch publicly available. Definitely check it out if you want to check out an interesting shoot 'em up on the PC Engine, Turbo Graphics. It's interesting. Next up, we have Miho Nakayama's Tokimeki High School. Finally, I'm so excited about this, and I feel bad for kind of saying finally, like, because I feel like I could have been the one to, like, maybe even do a little more to make sure that this got released a little earlier, but I did what I could, and I was definitely instrumental in getting this project released. Originally I dumped the script for it, I did a title screen for it, I actually hacked in a bunch of like text in the menus, and like I was really trying as much as I could to get this in a good place where it could it could be worked on by someone else a little bit further and released, and it was, right. Huge thanks to FC and Chill for stepping up, and our initial work on this was kind of just getting to a point where we could see where we needed to be. And after FC and Chill did a whole bunch more kind of work on getting better at understanding like the Famicom disk system and how to hack like really effectively for that, things like that, this just got better and better. And he really stepped up to the plate to kind of lead the project, bring in other people that needed to be brought in to just sort of bring this through the final steps, and actually release an English language translation patch for this. So huge thanks to him for that. I really appreciate all of that work. And this is such an interesting game too. So I've talked about it before, but in case this is your first video that you're seeing about this, it's described, I mean, like right on romhacking.net as a dating sim, but it's not really a dating sim, right? Tokimeki High School is a simulation. Welcome to Pia Carrot is a simulation. This is not a simulation, it's an adventure game. It's kind of like the Protopia serial murder cases, right, on the Famicom. Like somebody saw that and was like, hey, what if we made this about, instead of solving a crime, what if we made it about getting to get a girlfriend. It's like a fantasy girlfriend, right? It's like it's somebody who is a singer and a model, kind of like working in the entertainment industry, and they're covertly going to school as just like a normal high school student, so that they aren't dealing with all of that fandom and fame and things like that. And you, as the protagonist, basically have an opportunity as another normal high school student attending her school to meet her and date her and fall in love and stuff. So that is all well and good on its own, right? That's interesting enough, but this game has such an interesting pedigree. It was designed by Hironobu Sakaguchi and Yoshio Sakamoto of Final Fantasy and Metroid fame, respectively. It was a collaboration between Squaresoft and Nintendo. Nobuo Uematsu and Toshiaki Imai composed the music for this. Just so interesting, just from its pedigree, right? And not only that, like so Miho Nakayama, like she's a real singer, and like she has a career still, right? She's still making music, and this was, she was starting off. I think she was 17 at the time, right? So they really worked with her. Like you could beat this game. There's 2 different endings, I believe, and you take your little Famicom disc and you go down to the kiosk where you can get your Famicom discs written and read from and stuff, and you put it in. You can upload your game completions, and you're entered in a contest to win like merchandise and stuff. Like you could get this VHS tape that they produced with Miho Nakayama, all about like the production of the game and like just stuff with her and stuff like that. So it was really interesting. As part of the gameplay for the game, you would actually call these phone numbers as if you were, had gotten her phone number in the game. You would actually go to your phone and dial it up, and you'd hear a recorded message of Miho Nakayama, like you're talking to her on the phone, right? So a lot of really interesting kind of concepts around this. And big credit also to FC and Chill. I forget who it was. He had mentioned, though, that somebody did find the transcripts of the actual conversations, like the actual recordings of the phone, because we weren't even sure if we were going to be able to include those. We had some summaries of it, but anyway, we do have the actual phone conversations, and I believe there's a Lua script that you can use with a specific emulator. I believe it's FCUXE, and if you play the game with that, you can apply the script so that when you get to the phone number sequences, the script will print out the contents of the phone message for you, right? So I think that's really, really cool aspect of that. And again, just like the people that worked on this, obviously myself, FC and Chill, the Majin Zenki, kind of did some proofreading. I don't know if that was just on the manual, but they did like the manual and flyer translation. So thank you so much for that. I believe that the manual is included with the translation patch if you want to check that out. I'm assuming maybe this flyer as well. Graphicus redid the title screen. My title screen was fine, but this I think was a definite improvement. It's really cool. So thank you so much for that. Pennywise did a little ASM work and just guidance. Just I think really helped FC and Chill with some of the the technical aspects of working with the FDS. So thanks so much for that. Ayenni Hen and Tom, these are both big players in this fan translation scene here. Did some spot translations for it, so thank you so much, guys. I'm really excited. It's been 5 years, I think, since I did my initial work on this, and it's just such an interesting game. I definitely would recommend that you guys check it out. It definitely has some personality for just a little adventure game on the Famicom, and I think it's historically interesting, significant, with a lot of really cool elements to it. So yeah, I'm tremendously glad that that project is publicly available. I'm a little blown away. Another, I guess the final sort of English language translation patch that was released in the past 6 months is another adventure game. And not only that, it's also another adventure game based on Japanese pop music, right? You guys probably know what that is. It's TM Network Live in Power Bowl. I've mentioned this, many times on this channel. I think I've been working on it for, feels like at least a couple of years, right? I dumped a script, translated the script, and this is the first project that Pennywise and I have worked on directly together, right? I was actually a little worried if I not making the best first impression, I think, as a collaborator, because this got to a point where it was kind of back in my lap I'd left maybe 10% of the script untranslated because I wanted to go into the game and get a little more context, just make sure that I was getting the best possible translation in here for this, so there was no ambiguity or anything like that. And I sat on that for a while. I don't know how long, 6 months, a year, or something like that. So anyway, Pennywise reached out to me. They're like, hey, I've got somebody lined up who could probably go in and help, kind of play test and check the script and get that last 10% translated. And I came around to the idea. I was like, yeah, let's do that. And seriously, within 2 weeks, I think, of that, the patch was publicly available, right? So really, really great. Snowy Aria helped on that. Thank you so much for that. I follow them on YouTube. They might follow me back. I think we're mutuals. And they have worked on other fan translation projects, especially sort of disc-based stuff, the Dreamcast, the PlayStation, that kind of thing. Most recently, I think, or at least somewhat recently, Edu on the PlayStation. I think that was a really super interesting project. So yeah, that I really, really appreciate the help on that. Ryu Sui also did some spot translation, and I apologize. I think like they definitely follow me on YouTube. Again, we might be, or not YouTube, Twitter. We might be mutuals. I don't think I credited you in. Oh, no, I take that back. I credited you, but I don't think I like added you in to the tweet that I tweeted out when this was released. Anyway, that was not intentional. That was just the oversight on my part. It was a mistake on my part. So yeah, thank you so much. Some spot translation helping out, with that 10% translation, just getting that last bit finished up. Graphicus, again, had some help with the graphical stuff in the game. So again, thank you so much, everyone. This is so cool. I think it's really neat that we've been able, and these also were released within like maybe a couple weeks of each other. I feel like two translation projects related to the Japanese music scene at the time. TM Network is huge, right? They I think were big in the 80s. Who's the guy? Tetsuya Komuro. Is a producer. They're a member of TM Network, but they produced so much of the hugely popular like pop music of the 90s. It's crazy. TM Network is definitely like a just historically significant band. They're really big for just the Japanese music scene in general, and this game, you basically play as a character who gets, there's pretty much a nuclear Armageddon, right? And you get blasted through space and time to basically TM Network's recording studio in the 80s. And yeah, I think one of the things that's really fun about this game, from the Japanese perspective in particular, I was watching a Nico Nico video, and they were just going nuts about the way that TM Network, their studio album songs are portrayed in this game in their sort of 8-bit Famicom counterparts, right? People are like, oh, hey, it's this song, it's that song, I recognize this. Definitely, this is like an interesting little adventure game on the Famicom. I would recommend that you guys check it out if you're interested, I guess, aside from it just being kind of historically interesting. It's worth a little playthrough. It doesn't take a particularly long time to play, and it's pretty cool. So really excited. 3 good solid translation patch releases here in this last 6 months, and I want to let you guys know I have a Ko-fi, a coffee, something like that. This is a sort of a money-raising platform, like a donation platform. And I debated about this a bit. I feel like it's unethical to receive payment for translation project work like this, right? These are not my games. This stuff is not, other people own this stuff, other people worked on this stuff. I'm just, unofficially, right, coming in after the fact and just translating scripts for this stuff. But at the same time, right, like, I'm a human being who lives in the same world as everybody else, where like you need to pay bills and get by and things like that, and I'm doing fine, right? Like, this is all just kind of extra stuff. But when I think about the things that I do, this is one of those things that I think contributes the most. So I feel like if other people feel that it's valuable, buy me a beer, you know what I'm saying? Like, I can possibly devote more time to this if people are supporting me financially to a certain extent. And again, like, nothing I do is ever going to be gated behind payment. Nothing is ever going to be I'm never going to be accepting payment for a specific translating a specific thing or anything like that. It's just really just if you want to support me, like, you just in general, like, I'm a cool guy, I'm working on things that you guys support. The more that you guys support me, the more I can do of this kind of thing. So if you're interested in that, anyway, I made a little thing. You can donate to me. So in the future, I don't want to speculate too much. Obviously, I'm working on Oh My Goddess, so that I'm just going to keep plugging away at. I did dump a script. So I noticed a game, Hisatsu Shigoto Nin. So that's sort of like, I don't know, professional killer or something like that, right? And it's a adventure game. I feel like some of the most interesting stuff that's left on the Famicom are these adventure games, right? There's only about 250 games maybe left on the Famicom that don't have a translation. I say only, that's huge, that's a ton. But there's a good portion, a good section of adventure games, and I think they're, especially from a translation perspective, are some of the most interesting. So I was like, hey, let me dump a script for that. What I ended up doing is accidentally pulling up the ROM, not for Hisatsu Shigoto Nin, but Hisatsu Dojo Yaburi. So I took a look at that, I decoded the text encoding, I dumped a script for it, and then I went, oh, that's the wrong game. So I brought up Hisatsu Shigoto Nin, and I looked at that. So there is a dump script for Hisatsu Dojo Yaburi, which is more like a beat 'em up with like adventure game elements to it too, I think. So I mean, that seems cool too. But Hisatsu Shigoto Nin is more of like a traditional adventure game. The script is stored in a bunch of different formats. So I think what I'm going to do is go ahead and release a video on this channel about dumping that script. It has some stuff in fixed length text, which is normal. I've run across that in other games. In my dumping script, I had code that was in there for dumping fixed length text. I think what happened is I refactored that code a while back, and I basically ended up nuking the code that I had in there for dumping fixed length stuff. So I need to put that back in. I actually tried doing it the other night, and I got it like partially working, but I kind of screwed it up. I need to like go back in and just redo it. So hopefully I'll do that soon, and there should be a video on this channel about dumping that script, just because it'll be a little interesting. There's so many different formats for the script. The encoding is all the same, but I just wanted to show that to you guys, so look forward to that. I'm also dumping a script for another PCFX game, and I should have mentioned too, like, I did a podcast recently with Noelle. There's she's Speedy Noelle on Twitter, and I think the YouTube channel is Amelie Duray, something like that. Anyway, check her stuff out. She did a video on Welcome to Pia Carrot, the English language patch that I did, and that's great. It's a really, really great review and discussion around Welcome to Pia Carrot. So I would really recommend you guys check that out. She's doing stuff especially on sort of romantic adventure games for the PC-98 and that kind of thing. Of course, we did this. We were invited by One Controller Port, Ben Yoder, back onto his channel to do that podcast. So I would really recommend you check that out. We split it up into two different, two like 1 hour podcasts basically. And I think the discussion was great. Definitely some good information and some good insights into like the PCFX games that we're playing, things about the PCFX in general, and the translation scene and the fandom around it, and just around romantic adventure games. So I would really recommend you guys check that out. But anyway, so what I realized with the PCFX is, let's say there are a handful of games that I want to translate for that. If you're going to ask somebody to do something for you, the least you can do is be like, hey, can I do this myself, right? Do I need to, before I'm going to ask somebody, hey, can you dump scripts for some games on the PCFX or something, can I dump those scripts, right? The issue with like these ISO games is that they're bigger, and my techniques for dumping scripts might not really work as well as they do for like these 8 and 16-bit games. So anyway, I looked through a bunch of them, and I was right. Like, I'm not going to be able to dump scripts from a lot of those games using the techniques that I use personally. But one exception to that is Boundary Gate. It's a first-person dungeon crawling RPG on the PCFX. It was ported to the PlayStation, so somebody could translate it for that platform, but I believe it originated on the PCFX, and it's a cool game. It's definitely on my list of stuff that I would be interested in translating. I think people would be really interested in playing it. I need to page through like 52 megs of binary data, right, in order to locate all the script in that. I don't know. I've started on it. I have a feeling that I'm going to be able to complete that and dump a script for Boundary Gate. We'll see. But anyway, that's kind of on my plate right now. But other than that, I'm not going to speculate. But, it's been a really good 6 months. So thank you so much for joining me. And, I'll probably be doing another one of these videos again in 3 months, 6 months, a year, something like that. So keep an eye out. Keep an eye out for that video on the script for Hisatsu Shigoto Nin. And I hope you guys will join me again. All right? Take care.